Howdy folks, you've been thinking of how to feed your players information all wrong. Am I gonna do this every video, open by telling y'all you're doing something wrong? I'll say it this way instead. Y'all have been thinking of how to write background lore and the stuff relevant to your campaign and players in the tradition of conventional RPG designers, and I'm willing to wager your games suffer for it. Even if you hand your players magic items, hand them a scroll or NPC who could deliver information or whatnot, if you're thinking like a conventional RPG designer, your every solution to this problem will require you to keep your foot on the gas without any relief from the rules, and y'all better hope your improv skills can keep up. Howdy folks, Gelatinous Rube here. I told y'all not too long ago in the one-to-one time video that exposing your campaign to the ravages of time would encourage. Nah, force your players to post fences and plant flags if they wanted to secure access to resources, if they wanted to be anything more than rootless itinerant campaigners. I also told y'all that one-to-one time produces the best reliable space for downtime accessible to your players anyways. We're about to investigate the collision of these two ideas and the problem of feeding your players information in real time. I'm giving you folks a mechanic I call research. It's intended to provide the players a way to collect information during downtime. By going through the mechanics, I'm going to expose some unconscious hurdles and biases in your gaming the activity is meant to overcome. The mechanic of research is going to differ from game to game. I'm going to stick to one game's history for this. We're going to list out a few elements that I think should be common to research across games, and then we'll do research as we might do it in the 3 editions of D&D I think of as being the most relevant going forward, at least as far as my predictions for the hobby are concerned. First up is the idea that players generally should not know whether they succeeded or failed. Instead, we should use the ambiguity of this mechanic as an opportunity to reward experience and other goodies for discovering whether you succeeded or failed, and y'all of course accomplish this by way of adventuring. Research should be available to all characters. It is instead specific methods of research we as designers should restrict to specific character archetypes or builds. Letting a fighter shake down folks for information is fine. Allowing them to conduct their own divination ritual is probably not. The research must target a keyword or short phrase at most. We're not letting the players download the entire campaign history off of one downtime action. That would be silly. Finally, and most importantly, the research options provided must follow a structure of prompts for the referee to provide information. Let's talk games now. Now in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 1st edition, I would stick to spell research for the more scholarly activities described, and for the social side of research mechanics we're about to get into, I would default to the process of seeking out hirelings. I'm not the AD&D scholar, of course, perhaps there's already a mechanic in that book for seeking out information. In 4th edition, the Herald of New School Design, I would probably use a skill challenge for this. One true piece of information for every success gained, one corrupted or false piece of information for each failure, and one true nugget of knowledge turned to worse than useless each time the player fails by 5 or more. Finally, we come to 5th edition. This is the edition I originally designed a research action for in our module Chilmus Valley. The player is going to get at least 4 pieces of information based on the prompts available to the referee. The referee will provide information associated with the keyword, whether y'all succeeded or not, choosing 2 or more of the following. If y'all succeeded on the roll, the GM will feed you additional information, choosing 2 of the better lists of information. If y'all failed, the GM will give you at most 2 true selections and at least 2 false selections from the above list. If y'all fail by 5 or more, 3 or more selections will be false, and at most 1 will be true. Talk about tricky. You're rarely, if ever, going to know for sure whether you came away with correct information, and the best way to know for certain is to go out and adventure. I should also note that for this process, I reward experience. It's for confirming whether information is true or false, 200 XP for confirming true information, and 100 XP for confirming false information. Alright, let's talk about how the player should receive information in downtime. The referee is going to build information by following prompts. They may or may not structure the information in narrative or dump it as is, but the key here is the referee has categories of information dictated to them. They have specific guidelines which allow the referee to produce, and the players to expect, some reliability and consistency in the types of information provided. Let's audit these prompts, see why each and every one of them solves a problem in delivering information to your players. Let's pour salt on an open referee's wound, the subject of unused spells. The players have a spell or other paracausal resource you know will solve their problem, but for whatever reason, it has slipped the party's collective mind. It drives me insane. It has driven one of my DMs insane. I drove them insane by doing this, and I'm Mr. Win at RPGs. It's embarrassing! Through research and downtime, the players can help cushion themselves where they'd otherwise use their own resources poorly, and this applies to spells. Locations are easy game fodder. Here's a dungeon, here's a town with the resource you need, here's where a person was seen last, here's the secret pass to an unknown valley or cave, here's where the big bad evil guy is trying to get to. Lucky you, now y'all can beat him there. Getting to adventure is often just a process of walking to it, and getting players to adventure is often just a matter of pointing them in the right direction. This research result is just a handy spare index finger. The strengths and weaknesses of a given monster, NPC, army, magic item, curse, you name it, these are the most common culprits for game elements to turn disruptive. The party has a curse, if only they knew the cure. The party is about to face an army, if only they could see this part of its stat block, they could prepare. Disruptive game elements are a bit too removed from typical play to be responded to intelligently in some instances. Being surprised is part of the game. Discovering solutions, strengths, and weaknesses through the process of adventuring, this is an integral part of keeping the game interesting and fresh. These surprises should stay in the game. However, allowing the party to choose how they spend their time, to choose one surprise they want revealed, or at the very least hinted at, is just as interesting. We're keeping surprises in the game, and alongside the cool choice of which surprise the party is exposed to next, is the choice of what you'd like to peek at behind the screen. Now, much like locations, revealing important persons in a town, dungeon, government, military, or commercial hierarchy is pure adventure fodder. This fellow just bought a stolen stagecoach, and fencing it would be easy. This general has a hidden vice, women, or men, or drugs, and it's an opportunity to catch your target with his pants down. Unlike most locations, gaining information about a person gives you power over them. How the players use that mass of hypothetical potential is up to them, but the juicier the information, the more tempting it is to spend a session or two on that information. Now, the next few pieces of information are going to be juicier, more particular, better rewards overall. I keep about a 3-to-1 ratio when it comes to the previous prompts for information and the ones I'm about to reveal. First up is knowledge of a unique spell. This nugget of information is too good to resist. Just by appearing on the page, it makes promises to everyone who notices its presence. Try to remember for but a moment the Vancian roots of this game, of better days when the rules provided effective guidelines for players generating their own content, specifically spells in this instance. Remember the awe and delight, the mystery of developing a new spell or discovering one another wizard had researched. The setting implied by these mechanics, the true setting of D&D, was one in which mad mages went combing through ruins of civilizations past, hungry for any detail about the magic of old, building themselves into terrors on the world, one day creating spells of their own, as did their idols and tutors. When I designed this prompt, I knew I was reminding the referee of a specific privilege in modern editions that only they sadly hold. The ability to generate new spells is restricted to the game master. With this in mind, I feel compelled to remind them that they should exercise that privilege. They should lavish its results on the players. When I provide a player with knowledge of a unique spell, it reminds them of a unspoken, often unfulfilled promise made by the game, that not everything they'll discover is in their handbook. There's so much more to be found. Not every spell in the world was designed for a level 3 to 7 adventure. Not all of them were designed with the idea that you shouldn't be able to have 2 ongoing effects at once. It's time to recognize that even when the game's designers want to keep us tightly bound to conventional tabletop wisdom on how cool a magic user is allowed to be, the game's traditions cannot be chained or restricted. It takes the tiniest crack in that unholy seal to set those traditions loose upon your game. Start shipping. Moving on to dumb conclusions. This one's pretty simple, folks. Sometimes a stupid idea worms its way into the player's head. They could be headed for a total and complete disaster. A TPK could be lurking just around the corner, and there you sit, powerless, unable to maintain verisimilitude and warn them at the same time without some very specific resources at your disposal. This is one such resource. It's not just handy when the players are in danger either. It's also useful for identifying and quashing certain time-wasting lines of questioning mistakenly led by the players. Recipes for magic items and potions. It used to be that the method for making a given magic item or potion could appear right alongside the item in question, or all on its lonesome as its own reward. 5th edition mentions that a magic item's formula can exist. It specifies the rarity as being 1 level or category higher than the magic item's rarity, but they don't show up in play, and 5th edition's half-hearted attempts towards mentioning or gesturing at some kind of vague idea of magic item crafting have been somewhat unimpressive. The player base has certainly gotten the message. If they want crafting in 5e, they'll have to ask somebody else. Make sure you've clicked that subscribe button and little bell icon. I'm your Huckleberry. Reward cards are a more generalized mechanic for providing a player with a specific known task or objective, and a named, but perhaps otherwise unknown, reward. I better credit Matt Colville before we go any further. If y'all want to know more than a summary I'm about to give y'all, pause the video here and click on the title card on the screen. Are y'all back? Fantastic. Where was I? Reward cards! When I provide a player with this result, it's to represent a collection of otherwise useless or scattered knowledge that, when combined, promises some tangible reward. Colville mentioned struggling with the verisimilitude of this reward, but I think we've made an appropriate delivery mechanism for cards such as this. In our current Chillness Valley campaign, one of our players, a hobgoblin named Avril, is a former warlord looking to redeem himself amongst a wider, more peaceful society. He's investigating the disappearances of human and elven children from the town of Bronlock, having traveled some 500 miles just to get there. After he committed to the research downtime action in the process of his investigation, I provided him with a reward card. Its task, for you can include a task or prerequisite, was to visit the underworld spires nearby, one of the places where the world above has, through war, magic, or other calamities, sunken into the world below. His reward? Warlord's Insight. Now, I know that he doesn't know what that means, but I know that he knows, and also I know myself, that whatever comes out of that reward will be based off his character, will have some relevance to his history as a warlord, and provide him some advancement. It's perhaps the personalization possible. Thank the Lord above I've got a pop filter. With this type of information that makes it stand out. For that reason, it's also the most brutal when a character discovers the card was false on account of their poor roll. Alrighty folks, now we're going to talk about the different styles of research I allow players and characters to engage in. First up is asking around. Good old-fashioned detective work, chatting with whoever you can get a hand of to get leads. Personally, I offer bonuses to other downtime activities like carousing or putting out a call for hirelings when players engage with this. This is a great opportunity to personalize the information the player receives. The people who give your players information can be tracked down, they can be watched. Spells and threats can be cast upon them to verify information. It's an effective tie-in both to existing NPCs and the experience gain I mentioned earlier. I'm personally quite fond of introducing visions to the players while engaged in divination. Visions are rarely one-to-one with reality, they're more symbolic or prophetic than they are literal. Players rarely seem to have trouble reading into these, cutscenes, you could call them, though. Hey, didn't Matt Colville do another video on that? Sorry, partner, but I got a leech for at least another few months. Divination is a bit underserved across the editions, whether on account of play culture or poor rules. For this reason, I feel it's good and proper to give players who specialize in divination a little bit of exclusivity here, penalizing folks who don't have any special connection or spellcasting related to divination. In 5th edition terms, we would probably call this disadvantage. Next up is hitting the books. Now, hitting the books requires a source of readable knowledge detailing the subject under study. The information a player gains from this method should, in some way, resemble recorded legends, bestiaries, genealogical records, history books, and the products of scholarly or magical research. This information should be biased towards places, items, or formula of importance. This is the method most likely to give the character available information without additional work, like traveling or having others confirm it. On the other hand, this is the method most reliant on whether prior figures actually wrote their knowledge down. Next up is seeking within. This is for players trying to recall information they've already encountered in some way. Normally, if the player forgets information and hasn't written it down, I'm happy to leave it lie fallow until they remember, if they ever do. This doesn't apply to things like dropping your sword, of course. I'm talking information. While I'm happy to let a character forget some details on account of sloppy note-taking and enjoying the consequences therein, I am a similarly merciful game designer. If a player wants to expand a great resource, time, and make an effort in pursuit of this information, who am I to say no? Alrighty, I'm out of breath, folks. I've been out of breath through the entirety of this video. I cannot keep this up much longer. If y'all like this video, practice your quick drawing as fast as you can, click that subscribe button, and, well, y'all know the rest. Just in case, though, let me know what y'all thought, especially after you click the PDF link I'll have left in the comments. This is a 0.9 version of my research rules, part of a larger document on downtime. It's made for 5th edition, but this ain't hard to incorporate into something else. Alright, I'm writing out, folks. Peace!